True nearness to Allah begins with conscious submission, and I want you to really understand what I mean by that. When most people think of being close to Allah, they immediately imagine prayer, ritual, or adherence to religious rules. And yes, those are important, but there is a deeper reality that often goes unnoticed. You can stand in the longest prayer, you can read the most Quran, and yet still feel distant from Allah if your heart has not truly bowed before Him. True closeness starts not with the body, but with the heart. Before your forehead touches the ground, your soul must recognize its origin, its creator, and its absolute dependence on Him. Think about what it means to submit consciously. We live in a world obsessed with control. We want to manage outcomes, dictate terms, and shape reality according to our whims. And yet, in the moment of true submission, we willingly relinquish control, not in weakness, but in strength. The heart says, I cannot, you can. I am limited, you are infinite. I am in need, you are the provider. This is what it means to surrender consciously. It is an intellectual recognition, a psychological shift, and a spiritual act all at once. Submission is not just bending the body, it is bending the ego, taming the desires that shout for dominance, and acknowledging that our very existence is contingent on something far greater than ourselves. When you consciously submit, the act of bowing in prayer transforms. It is no longer a mechanical motion. Every movement becomes imbued with awareness. The lowering of the head, the placing of the forehead on the ground, becomes a profound symbol. This is your heart, flattened by humility, in direct connection with Allah. There is a unique psychology in this posture. Humility, when deeply felt, releases the ego's grip. The mind stops arguing with the world, the heart stops resisting, and in that quiet surrender, you experience a nearness that is beyond words. It is intimate, it is personal, and it is transformative. Moreover, conscious submission reshapes how we perceive ourselves in relation to everything else. We start to realize that our struggles, our desires, our fears, they are all part of a larger divine framework. Submission allows us to look at life differently. We no longer panic when things do not go our way. We no longer measure our worth by worldly success. Instead, we understand that our true measure lies in how sincerely we turn to Allah, how authentically we bow, and how fully we acknowledge our dependence on Him. This is the internal landscape of someone who is close to Allah, a mind at peace, a heart softened, and a soul attuned to the divine presence. But let me be clear, this is not easy. The ego resists, the world distracts, and the self wants to maintain its illusions of independence. That is precisely why conscious submission is so powerful. It is a deliberate, active choice to recognize Allah's authority over our lives, to feel our own limitations, and to place trust in something infinitely greater than ourselves. Every time we consciously submit, our connection deepens, our awareness heightens, and our souls taste the sweetness of nearness that the world cannot give. So, the next time you bow in prayer, don't let it be a routine motion. Let it be a conscious act of surrender, a moment when your heart speaks louder than your lips, when your soul acknowledges its origin, and when your being whispers to the Creator, I am yours. This is the closest you can be to Allah, not by what you do externally, but by the depth of your internal submission. Let this awareness guide your prayers, your actions, and your life, and watch how the simple act of bowing transforms into the profound reality of nearness to Allah. When we talk about closeness to Allah, we often focus on the external rituals, the outward expressions of devotion, but true nearness reaches its pinnacle in Sajdah, the moment when the human soul meets its origin. It is in prostration that we experience the deepest intimacy with our Creator, the moment when the heart aligns completely with divine reality. Think about it. In Sajdah, the body is in its lowest position, yet the soul is lifted to the highest station. The humility of the posture does not diminish us, it elevates us in a way that the mind alone cannot comprehend. There is a profound psychological and spiritual dynamic at work here. Consider the physicality of it for a moment. The forehead, the symbol of our intellect and reasoning, touches the ground, signaling submission and acknowledgement that all knowledge, all understanding, all power ultimately originates from Allah. The hands, the arms, the knees, all are lowered, reflecting a voluntary relinquishing of control. Every part of the body is in harmony with the message of the heart. I belong to you, and I am nothing without you. Psychologists today speak about embodied cognition, the way our bodily posture affects our thoughts and emotions. Sajdah is the ultimate embodiment of humility. It trains the mind to internalize surrender, shaping the very architecture of our spiritual consciousness. But there is more than the physical. There is the inner landscape of Sajdah, the profound meeting point of the finite and the infinite. In that moment, the distractions of the world fade, time seems to pause. Your worries, your anxieties, the endless chatter of the mind, all are momentarily silenced. What remains is the soul, stripped of pretense, speaking directly to the one who knows it most intimately. There is a vulnerability in this act, a psychological nakedness that the ego instinctively resists. And yet, it is precisely this vulnerability that creates the deepest connection. To be truly seen, truly known, and yet loved and accepted, that is the spiritual miracle of Sajdah. There is also a remarkable philosophical truth embedded in this act. Human beings are created from clay, humbled in our origin, yet capable of reaching heights unimaginable. Sajdah reminds us of both, our humble beginning and our potential to transcend. In that posture, we touch the soil that shaped us, while our soul touches the one who gave us life. It is a symbolic and literal convergence of humility and intimacy. The more sincerely we prostrate, the more acutely we recognize our dependence, our neediness, and our inherent connection to the divine. This recognition is not a limitation, it is liberation. By acknowledging our total reliance, we are freed from the illusion of self-sufficiency and drawn into a reality that sustains us fully. And this intimacy is not fleeting. Every sajdah, every prostration, is an opportunity to experience the closeness of Allah anew. It becomes a sanctuary within the chaos of life, a place where the heart can rest and the soul can breathe. It teaches the servant that proximity to Allah is not measured by grandeur or spectacle, but by sincerity, vulnerability, and conscious presence. The heart learns to meet the Creator not in arrogance, not in demand, but in recognition and awe. So, the next time you lower yourself in sajdah, remember what is happening beneath the surface. This is not merely a ritual. This is a sacred encounter, a meeting between the human and the divine, where humility and intimacy converge, where the soul remembers its origin and feels the closeness of its Creator. Let every prostration be a moment of awakening, a reminder that true nearness is not about distance but depth. And in that depth you will find the closest place you can ever be to Allah, a place of profound peace, surrender, and spiritual elevation. When we speak of drawing near to Allah, we often emphasize the acts of worship we perform. The words we utter in prayer, the supplications we memorize, the rituals we meticulously observe. And while these are all beautiful and necessary, there is a dimension of nearness that goes beyond words. Silence before Allah, the quiet surrender of the heart without articulation, is often more transformative than anything we can express verbally. It is in the stillness, in the unspoken communion, that the soul finds a depth of intimacy that speech alone cannot reach. Think about the psychology of silence for a moment. Our lives are dominated by noise, external noise of the world, and internal noise of the mind. Thoughts race, desires pull, fears nag, and the ego constantly asserts itself. The human mind becomes a crowded, restless place. And yet, in the act of silent worship, particularly in sujood or in moments of heartfelt reflection, all of that chatter diminishes. The heart stops trying to control, the mind ceases its endless calculations, and the soul finds space to breathe. It is here, in this deliberate quiet, that one begins to truly feel Allah's presence. There is a profound philosophical truth here as well. The divine is infinite, while our language and understanding are finite. Words, by their nature, are limited. They can point, hint, suggest, but they can never fully encompass the reality of Allah. Silence, on the other hand, allows the heart to experience what cannot be articulated. In that stillness, the soul engages in a direct, unmediated encounter with the Creator. It is a type of knowing that transcends intellect, a knowing felt in the deepest recesses of the self. The quiet heart speaks volumes even when the lips remain still. Emotionally, this silence trains us in authenticity. When the heart is not trying to impress, not trying to formulate the right words, not concerned with how pious or articulate we appear, we encounter Allah in our raw, unfiltered state. There is a freedom in this vulnerability. Tears may come, a deep sense of need may surface, or a wave of gratitude may rise from within. These experiences are intimate, unrepeatable, and profoundly personal. They are moments where the soul is most open, most receptive, and most alive. And this is not merely a spiritual exercise, it has a real psychological impact. The mind, conditioned to constant stimulation, learns to rest. The heart, conditioned to fear and longing, learns to trust. In silence, the soul practices awareness and presence, two qualities that form the foundation of closeness to Allah. The stillness becomes a training ground where the heart learns to recognize divine guidance, to hear the subtle promptings of mercy, and to feel the encompassing care of its Creator. It is a discipline that cultivates clarity, depth, and intimacy simultaneously. Yet silence is not emptiness. It is fertile ground. It is in the quiet heart that divine love, guidance, and understanding begin to take root. When we stop filling every moment with words, distractions, or demands, we create space for something infinitely greater than ourselves to enter. This is why prophets and saints throughout history have emphasized moments of quiet reflection, meditation, and sujood as the highest stages of spiritual awareness. They understood what our restless souls often forget, that God is most deeply known not in the noise of our speech, but in the sacred silence of the heart. So, let your worship not be measured solely by words. Learn to cultivate silence, to sit in stillness, and to let your heart speak without speaking. In these moments, you will discover a closeness that surpasses ritual, a connection that transcends understanding, and a peace that the world cannot give. The next time you bow, pause, or reflect, remember that sometimes the most powerful conversation with Allah is the one that happens without a single word. A conversation that echoes in the quiet chambers of your soul and draws you closer than you ever imagined. Closeness to Allah is not about perfection. This is a truth that many of us struggle to accept because the world conditions us to believe that worthiness is earned through flawless performance, through always being strong, disciplined, or composed. But Allah does not draw near to perfection. He draws near to honesty, to authenticity, to the heart that turns to Him as it truly is, not as it wishes to appear. The broken, the fearful, the repentant, and even the ones who are confused, these are the souls who experience a nearness to Allah that cannot be measured or fabricated. True intimacy begins where pretense ends. Think about the psychology of this. We live in a world of masks. We present the version of ourselves that is acceptable, capable, in control, yet the heart knows the truth. There is anxiety, there is doubt, there is yearning for mercy. Allah does not require us to hide these aspects of our humanity. He invites us to bring them forward. This invitation to vulnerability is profoundly liberating. It allows the heart to drop its defenses and meet the divine without shame or hesitation. Every tear shed in sincerity, every whispered plea in desperation, every honest acknowledgement of weakness is a bridge to Allah. It is the truth of our humanity that becomes the vehicle for divine closeness. Philosophically, this reflects the profound balance between dependence and dignity. To submit our flaws, our mistakes, our unworthiness is not humiliation. It is recognition of our true position before the Creator. When we are emotionally honest, we stop trying to control outcomes or manufacture holiness. We stop performing for others or for ourselves. And in that very act of letting go, the heart becomes expansive. It is in the acknowledgement of need that we encounter grace, and in the confrontation with our limitations that we find divine love most intensely. Consider how often we delay turning to Allah because we feel unworthy. We tell ourselves, I need to fix this first, I need to be better, I need to be stronger. But closeness to Allah does not wait for perfection. In fact, it often arrives most fully when we recognize that we have no control, that we cannot fix ourselves, and that our only recourse is the mercy of our Creator. This is a radical lesson. Spiritual maturity is not measured by how flawless we are, but by how willing we are to be honest, open, and dependent on Allah. This emotional honesty also transforms our inner life. The mind, often anxious about performance, finds relief in sincerity. The heart, frequently burdened by guilt, finds relief in transparency. The soul, trapped in cycles of striving and shame, finds freedom in the acceptance that Allah's closeness is not conditional upon our perfection, but upon our truthfulness. When we fully embrace our humanity before Him, we discover a depth of intimacy that cannot exist in pretense. We learn to meet Allah as He desires us to meet Him, not as idealized versions of ourselves, but as real, flawed, striving beings yearning for connection. So, the next time you approach Allah, remember that authenticity matters more than perfection. Do not wait to be flawless. Do not hide your tears, your doubts, or your fears. Bring them forward with sincerity, and you will find that Allah's closeness is not only accessible, it is magnified in the presence of a humble, honest heart. True nearness is not a reward for performance. It is the natural outcome of emotional honesty, vulnerability, and trust. Let this understanding guide your prayers, your reflection, and your moments of intimacy with Allah, and allow your heart to be fully, courageously, and beautifully itself. Closeness to Allah is not a one-time achievement. It is cultivated, nurtured, and deepened through consistency. Many of us think that extraordinary experiences of nearness require extraordinary acts, grand gestures, or dramatic spiritual events. But the truth is that Allah draws near to the heart that turns to Him regularly, even in small, seemingly mundane ways. Spiritual intimacy is built like a muscle. It strengthens over time through repeated, conscious effort. It is in the quiet accumulation of daily acts of devotion that closeness grows, not necessarily in spectacular displays of piety. Think about the psychology of habit. Our minds and hearts are conditioned by repetition. The more consistently we engage in meaningful acts, the more these acts shape our inner world. A single act of worship can move us, can inspire us, can touch the soul. But it is consistent, deliberate practice that rewires our consciousness. 2 rak'ah offered with presence daily. Dhikr whispered from the heart, a brief moment of istighfar in the midst of our day. These are the small, persistent threads that weave the fabric of intimacy with Allah. Over time, they form a tapestry of spiritual awareness that nothing else can replicate. There is also a profound philosophical lesson here. Closeness to Allah is relational, and relationships require time, attention, and presence. Just as human relationships deepen when we show up consistently, when we listen, speak, and act with care, so too does our relationship with Allah flourish through regular acts of sincerity. The quantity of worship is secondary to the consistency of attention. A few sincere, mindful moments each day can have more transformative power than sporadic bursts of intense devotion. What matters is the heart's orientation, the intentionality behind each act, and the conscious effort to turn toward Allah with regularity. Consistency also cultivates awareness. When we engage in regular worship, our hearts begin to recognize divine signs in daily life. The world, which often appears chaotic and distracting, becomes a canvas for remembrance. Small acts of devotion train the soul to perceive the sacred in the ordinary, to hear the whispers of mercy, and to respond with gratitude and humility. Each moment of conscious worship reinforces the inner habit of turning to Allah, until it becomes a natural orientation of the heart rather than an external obligation. This is where the psychological and spiritual converge. Regularity creates receptivity, and receptivity deepens connection. Moreover, consistency is an act of trust. By showing up regularly, we acknowledge that spiritual growth is a process. We accept that nearness to Allah is not instant, but cumulative. This recognition fosters patience, resilience, and long-term perspective. We learn to value steady progress over fleeting experiences, to appreciate the gradual deepening of our inner life, and to understand that Allah's presence is always accessible, but often in subtle, persistent ways rather than dramatic interventions. So, the next time you feel distant, overwhelmed, or unsure of your progress, remember the power of small, consistent acts. Each moment of sincere prayer, each humble remembrance, each conscious turn of the heart toward Allah is a building block of intimacy. Closeness grows not through perfection, but through persistence. Let your daily devotion, your repeated acts of sincerity, and your mindful consistency be the pathway that leads you ever nearer to Allah. Over time, these small, deliberate choices accumulate, and the heart experiences a depth of nearness that is steady, enduring, and transformative. There is a profound truth that many people overlook. The more you detach from the world, the more you feel Allah. This is not about abandoning life or responsibilities. It is about freeing the heart from the illusion that the world can provide what only Allah can. We live in a society obsessed with accumulation of wealth, status, relationships, and experiences, constantly measuring our worth by external gains. But true spiritual closeness requires a radical reorientation, to recognize that the heart is never fully satisfied by the ephemeral, and that peace, fulfillment, and intimacy can only be found in connection with the eternal. Consider the psychology behind attachment. When the heart clings to worldly outcomes, approval, success, comfort, it becomes restless, anxious, and fragmented. Every desire, every disappointment, every fleeting joy becomes a source of tension. But when we detach, not by rejecting life, but by prioritizing the divine over the temporal, the heart enters a space of spaciousness. The more we let go of our insistence on control, the more we create room for Allah's presence to fill us. Detachment is not emptiness, it is freedom. It is the liberation of the soul from the weight of constant craving, allowing it to soar in awareness and presence. Philosophically, detachment aligns with the natural hierarchy of human dependence. We were created to rely ultimately on Allah, yet we often invert that order, relying excessively on what is fleeting. The closer we align ourselves with our origin, the more attuned we become to the one who sustains us. This detachment is not indifference, it is discernment. It teaches the heart to value what is eternal and to place less weight on what is transient. In doing so, we begin to experience a clarity that the world cannot provide, a clarity in which the voice of Allah is heard more distinctly, and the heart recognizes the rhythms of divine care in everyday life. Detachment also cultivates resilience and contentment. When our hearts are not tethered exclusively to worldly validations, we respond to trials with calmness and trust. Difficulties become reminders of divine wisdom rather than sources of despair. Joys become blessings rather than sources of pride. In this state, every moment of life, every breath, every interaction, every challenge is infused with awareness of Allah's presence. The heart begins to experience what scholars describe as qurb, a closeness not dependent on external circumstances, but on internal orientation. There is a practical dimension as well. Detachment requires conscious effort, reflection, and prioritization. It is expressed through simplicity, moderation, and mindful attention to what truly matters. Every act of letting go, whether it is releasing an unhealthy attachment, moderating a desire, or consciously redirecting attention from fleeting distractions to Allah, strengthens this inner freedom. Each choice cultivates a heart that is spacious, attentive, and available for divine connection. Ultimately, the more we detach, the more we see the world as a vehicle for remembrance rather than a source of ultimate fulfillment. In that spacious heart, the presence of Allah becomes tangible. We begin to feel Him in quiet moments, in the rhythm of prayer, in the unfolding of life itself. Detachment does not mean disengagement. It means reorienting our dependence so that the heart, freed from distraction, rests fully in the Creator. So, as you reflect on your life, ask yourself, what is weighing my heart down? What attachments are keeping me from feeling the nearness of Allah? Begin to release them one by one, consciously and purposefully. The less the heart clings to the transient, the more it is capable of embracing the eternal. And in that embrace, you will discover the ultimate intimacy, the closest place you can ever be to Allah, a heart free, aware, and wholly present in His presence.